Good morning, everyone. My name is Valentina De Marchi. I do work at ESADE Business School and at University of Padova. And it's a pleasure today to share with you what I've learned in the last 10 years about how to make company truly sustainable, but more than that, how to support their innovation path. So to ensure that they achieve their goals of becoming truly sustainable over time. So the starting point for this discussion is the evidence that companies has a central role into the many environmental problems that we see today. The point is that we are facing a situation in which we are having a decline in the availability of resources. Think, for example, to critical raw materials, or think about water, to make another example. The availability of those resources are reducing importantly over the years. Meanwhile, the amount of people that is requiring a life standard like the one in developed countries, and the amount of products required by single consumers are increasingly exponentially. So as you can easily see, we're getting toward a very drastic situation that is going to impact the ability of companies to be viable. The idea of today's class is to share some insight into how we can change the shape of this curve and ensure that companies by transforming their activities, can represent ways into which we can actually regenerate the environmental conditions. By innovating, by finding external resources to partner with, and by identifying the right planning actions to ensure to go from wishes to become a wonderful, economically and sustainable viable company to effectiveness, to become really able to do, measure, and report sustainability implications that are having a reduction in impact on the environment. So what we're talking about is about how to provide a large change into the ways actions are performed, because that's true and that's clear, right? If we do want to transform and to achieve very important goals in terms of environmental issues, which are needed given the actual amount of issues related, for example, to climate change or biodiversity, if we want to go in that direction, then we cannot continue doing the same type of actions and practices that has brought us here. The idea will be to find ways to move from a circular model, from a linear model to a circular model. A model, the linear one, also called the take, make, use, and dispose, that is based on two false assumptions. The first, that resources are illimited. The second, that the responsibility of the company stops at the moment in which the product gets in the hand of the consumers. But it is much more than that. The truth is that circular economy is also a little bit more than recycling economy, whose idea is simply to realize product that might be recycled at the end of life. The point is that those type of results might not be enough, to simply ensure that the product can be recycled. There can be much more to be done to ensure that actually the value is maintained and enhanced during the process. For example, enabling more users to use the same product, enabling the possibility to making the product longer lasting, reuse parts that are still working, or repairing again those that can be repaired to ensure that we're actually wasting the least possible value and making any resource that we use staying longer into the process and trying to take the least from the natural environment. With the idea to achieve circular economy not as a goal, but as a mean, with the idea to use these practices, as you'll also be learning already in previous masterclasses, when you have been described about different business models to achieve circularity, it's important that we start by this acknowledgement that circular economy is a tool, it's not the mean of the activity of the companies, where the tool is to ensure regeneration, so to ensure that the action of the companies not only reduces their impacts, trying to be less impactful than, let's say, conventional production, but on the contrary, that also became a positive, so a force of change for good, taking out from the environment problems that have been done in previous years by other actors, and to transform those problems, for example, the presence of plastic in the oceans, into opportunity to create new businesses and regenerate via the very activity of the companies what is the ecosystems in which the company is embedded. Now, the idea in the system is therefore to move from an understanding of production in which value is created just into the production of the products or the service, and then the value is destroyed where the product is used or when the product is not be able to use anymore. And thinking about what are the many ways in which value can be retained other than added, so that we do close the circles, but we also ensure creating value streams across these actions. The starting point for this understanding is that to look at what are the gains that the companies can get. Because I'm sure every of you that is willing to open a new business is very motivated by change the world, but also has to address financial constraints, has to address economic viability reasons. So what are the ways in which actually sustainability and circularity can provide companies with wealthy and revenue streams? Well, a first way to think about sustainability and circularity is to think about an approach to reduce or avoid risks. More and more financial organizations are asking companies to report about their impacts. More and more the legislation is asking firms, especially the bigger ones, but also all the suppliers that are connecting in their value chains, to reduce their burden on the environment and to measure how they are and to track how they are improving, or more general realizing finding those companies that are not achieving those results. But even it's also a way to be more sustainable and careful about resources. It's also a way to get protected against the risk, for example, of falling out of resources. In many industries now, the prices of resources has been increasing a lot, and that's because that's the effect of the scarcity of materials. So thinking about how to close the loops could also be a way to reduce dependency on virgin materials. Another reason, another way in which being sustainable can be successful is to ensure companies to differentiate, to reduce costs, to cut on their expenses. Think about, for example, a more energy efficiency process. Well, that's an easy way to cut on the energy bill. But much more can also be done by reduce on waste costs, which is actually a much bigger chunk of costs than companies usually think of. But you could also think about ways to think sustainability as a process to create value for the company as well, other than to the society, by enabling companies to differentiate, to introduce in markets new products having new meaning, and potentially also to ask for a premium price to it, or any way to try to support them winning the competition game. Finally, it could also be a way to enter new markets. In some markets, for example, more and more in the public procurement, it's relevant for companies to show that they are responsible, sustainable, that they use, for example, certified materials, that they entail a part of their products that are circular, to be able to access some very relevant markets. For example, countries in which the public opinion and the public awareness of these topics is higher, or type of markets, again, for example, the public procurement. For any type of companies, even though those that do not sell a final product or do not sell to the public, one element is definitely worth to consider when it comes to going sustainable. A key return that most of companies I've been working with told me about is a return into their ability to motivate personnel and attract talents, to retain the great people that you need to actually have to find the best solutions in whatever activities you are performing. There are so many companies to work with. Why should a new laureate, a graduate, come to your company and work with you? Well, being able to show that you are effectively committed to create not only value for the company and the shareholders, but also for a variety of stakeholders is actually providing a great motivation leverage to companies and their employees that can also transform into better productivity, for example. All of this can be achieved by companies, but more than that, there is also the evidence, the acknowledgement of going in this direction, because that's actually the right things to do if we're thinking as entrepreneurs, as persons that are starting a new venture, that are entering challenges, addressing challenges to produce something new and to bring to the market something that we really care about. So giving a broader sense about this activity is more about what we may call an ethical dimension, an ethical driver of sustainability. So what I told so far to you is that sustainability can provide win-win solutions, that there is a business case for sustainability, that can be economical returns that are needed for any company, especially for small companies to start up with, because small companies may not be able to bear initial, for example, bigger costs. So finding ways to reduce costs or increase competitiveness via differentiation or increase ability to be productive because of holding the best people, those are ways to enhance those win-win. The key question, however, is how to do so if sustainability is actually so powerful that can enable us to tackle the environmental problems that you learned being summarized within the framework of the 9 planetary boundaries. How can we ensure achieving those sustainability? Well, becoming circular, for example, and closing the loops as a way to become sustainable and regenerative, it requires companies to rethink all of their activities as respect to linear, traditional, conventional type of companies. The way they design products, thinking, for example, where is this material coming from? Where it will go? How it will be used? Very simple questions that have very powerful meaning. And thinking, for example, about how can we rethink the materials we're using? How can we ensure that after we have asked ourselves those questions on the products we realize, how can we ensure to reduce the footprint on the environment, for example, enabling dematerialization or durability of the products we're doing? But it's also about thinking how to maximize and how to rethink, how to make more efficient the all production processes, and how to ensure closing the loops, how to make sure that we are collecting our own waste or someone else's waste and transform that into new business opportunities. And rethinking all the distribution systems, which in a word means to rethink the whole business model of the organization, the whole way it is organized, all activities it realizes. There is no one department in your company that could say, well, for becoming circular, I am not needed. My action is not relevant. On the contrary, each and every actions need to be modified to include in the inner of their activities sustainability and circularity. And that is needed to achieve the best results. So ensure that we're not just doing actions for sustainability. You're not just doing something you can write about, but you're also achieving results so that you are effectively reducing the impacts on the environment, which is something more and more companies are going to be required to report about. But more importantly, that is also a best way to spend your energies, right? Because you don't really want to spend a lot of your energy and creativity to think about how to, for example, introduce new actions if those actions are not really going to the goal of sustainability that you have set. I'm sorry to say, however, that this path is not that easy to follow. There are many types of challenges that companies may need to go through when they are going for sustainability. For example, the first type of challenges regard legislative issues. Sometimes there are great ideas, but it's not possible to commercialize them or to produce them when it comes to using a waste that has not already been recognized as a byproduct, for example. Sometimes there are technological differences. How to ensure closing the loops and recovering materials if it's so difficult, for example, to extract waste from existing products. Sometimes companies report market-related issues. Customers not being ready, not being aware, not being able to appreciate the value added that products that follows a very different production path can enable to the consumer. Sometimes it's a question of costs. There is great ideas, there is a market for that, but achieving that big change requires to accrue such a big chunk of financial resources that companies may not be able to do. But do you know what's the most important difficulties? That's what I would call more cultural or organizational challenges. That's changing the mindset of us that has been working embedded in a context built with a linear perspective and having us all working in organizations thinking with different lenses what may look as problems into and looking them as opportunities, thinking about something that is as a waste as a potential source for innovation and change and development. So how to go in this context? Because I told you there is a lot of opportunities to gain economically too from sustainability, but there are also a lot of challenges which very often make so that it's not possible for circular companies, sustainable companies to be as profitable as what are the non-sustainable companies. So how to navigate those challenges? The key message I would like you to learn from this masterclass today is that sustainability is not easy, but that there are ways for you not to give up. And if you're going to navigate those challenges, being able to bear when facing those challenges, you will be able to find ways to actually achieve those results, to be both a companies that can produce economic values, that can introduce to the markets new great products or services, and at the same time that is contributing meaningfully to reducing one of the most big challenges that our humankind is facing nowadays, which is related again with biodiversity loss, with climate change, and all the planetary boundaries crossing that we're doing. The truth is that there is a tiny line to walk to achieve those results, but there are some routines, some practices that are common across successful companies, and that can be learned and replicated. So let's see all of them one by one to see how we can manage this act of balancing to navigate complexity and finding ways forward. So the first approach to ensure approaching in a good way and in a fruitful way the challenges that do arise when trying to be sustainable and circular is to develop a clear vision and value. Companies that have set a clear vision and value, they're more likely to stick with that, even in our time. And thanks to this resilience to be able to actually achieve the results they want to do. So that's very important, for example, to create a clear vision and strategy where sustainability is clearly embedded, and to share this vision and values with all the person within organization. Possibly, for example, even aligning incentives of managers to results that can be achieved in terms of a reduction of environmental outputs. A second important element is that to ensure creativity, to ensure a context where innovation can thrive. And to do that, some important tricks you can learn. For example, creating interdisciplinary teams within your organization. That means, for example, within the R&D department, having someone that is not an expert on that product, that comes from very diverse tradition than, for example, that your industry, which may brings in new novel ideas. Or Building interdisciplinary teams within organization, ensuring that there is a sustainability ambassador within every department, R&D, marketing, supply, and that those ambassadors meet and can create like a sustainability committee that is very well tied to the activities of every department. And then, of course, creating routines that can ensure that these aspects can stick over time. And for example, ensuring that in every stage of, again, the R&D process, there is a set of questions that all the person working on that should ask themselves that points their attention toward the sustainability results you want to achieve. A third element regards about planning. This is not something easy, not something that can be achieved in a short while, but it's something that needs to be planned in the short and medium term. So you need to set clear goals and KPIs for the short and the medium long term that can enable you not only to measure your actions, but also the change that you have produced in terms of, again, reduction of emissions, for example. That's also a way of planning and of thinking that doesn't put just the customer, the client at the center of your process, but put nature in the center of it. What is the best choices that will maximize the returns to nature? And of course, also ensuring to have a passionate capital when it comes to sustainability, because results are not going to be achieved in one day. It's important that as we are setting those standards, we give ourselves the right pace to achieve that and measure them before we give them up. Another important element is to plan well the monetary flows. The traditional model of getting revenue streams when we sell the products and ensuring that this cover the costs we have expended to realize it is just part of the story. There are so many more ways, for example, to reduce costs. Getting my input as a waste from another company, getting it for free because I reduce a burden from that company, which should pay costs for the waste. To dispose the waste and using that as an input for my activities. Or, for example, things about novel way to get money. And, for example, thinking about warranties or pays to use type of models. So what are ways in which we can capitalize the value that is produced and retained within circular value chains? And companies like Patagonia are, for example, showing that there are so many moments in which the company can get value back of the product throughout its life cycle. For example, yes, selling the product, but also repairing the product, but also ensuring customers can find a way to sell their products in shared platforms. So again, gaining at every of these points, the little pieces that are necessary to cover the eventual higher costs of production. So planning it from the very beginning, what are the costs? What are the revenue streams? How can we make sure that this monetary flows can make our organization viable economically beyond the simple moment in which we are selling the products on the market? And then the most relevant of all, thinking who are the complementary resources that we need to make sure that we are going to be becoming effectively sustainable, effectively circular, effectively able to close the loops to ensure that we are minimizing our waste and that we are maximizing the value and the time in which the products are kept in the loop. So I mentioned that thinking about this connection is the most relevant one, because that's also another very important message I would like you to learn from this masterclass. No company is an island. No company alone can achieve regeneration, can put in place fully closed loops, circles. If not, for very, very few cases, but I have to tell you that finally, none of the companies I've been working with, none of the very successful cases were actually doing it alone. Collaborating with other partners is essential for you to share risks, to achieve results, and to find the complementary resources that you will need, because that's also very relevant. you won't have all the resources to really close the circle, to really close the loops and ensure you're not wasting, rather than you are ensuring the environment is getting better than in the states in which you find it as an organization. So how to make sure that those connections work, that we do find partners that enable us to effectively achieve our results? That's another very important question, because we all know that collaborating is also very difficult, right? So how to collaborate at best when it comes to sustainability? First, find partners that are the best fit for you, which means that are in line with your own values and vision, that are open to change, that are open to come and grow with you toward the direction of circularity. Find partners that you can trust and that you build trustworthy relationship with. Find someone that maybe there is not already someone that has the technology that you need, but make sure you find someone that is open to consider building that technology and, more importantly, believe as you do in the value of building, regenerating our society. Second suggestion, ensure looking out broad and wide about the type of actors you want to engage. There are many, many more actors than you may think that may be useful for you. Do you want to look for different materials to manufacture your products? Are you thinking about how could I get learning about where to find a waste that I could transform, or about how to transform a waste that I have? Well, of course, your suppliers, your existing suppliers or novel suppliers can be useful. But yes, maybe you can think about companies, organizations that work in very different industries, far away from yours, but that have developed a similar technology in a different context. More than that, you can also look about, for example, NGOs, non-governmental organizations that, for example, may be happy to contribute with you to take out waste, for example, from the oceans, for you to then transform it into something that may become more meaningful, or to collaborate with you into the other type of activities, for example, in the sorting of the wastes or in the transformation of it. And then about your customers and your clients, which may become your own suppliers, giving it back to you the trashed material, the materials that the products that are finished their life cycle and that can't be used anymore, and maybe they will ship back to you. And many competitors too, because a lot of those challenges, other companies are challenging too. A lot of other companies need to face, for example, the new legislation requirements, or need to face the higher prices for the resources because of the scarcity of resources. How can you go together so to build a more sustainable and regenerative society? Think about very broad and wide, because possibly your best partner is someone that has never worked in your industry, but is very complementary to what you do. Another interesting suggestion, build long-lasting relationship. Understanding each other takes time. And when it comes to sustainability and circularity, these aspects of long-termism is even more relevant, because actually environmental results, a deep change requires time to occur. And you can't ask to your partners to bear important changes unless you are open to recognize to them some of their effort. And sticking with them and being passionate for them to come with you and build. And that doesn't mean, of course, to just stick with a partner that is not working well with you, but giving each other the time and the insurance that the investments that you're asking your partners to do are going to be long-lasting, so are part of a longer relationship. But the most important of all the aspects when it comes to be very sustainable is to think about the incentives. What incentives can you ensure to all of these partners? And making sure that actually their collaboration is going to be there. How to make sure that NGO would support you in finding new ways to collect best waste, for example. How to ensure that your customer, your suppliers will change their processes to accommodate for your own new business model. A key way to do that is to ensure that all of them see a very good incentive, see a return in doing that. I'm not saying just about economic returns. You may pay, for example, for some of their waste, but lower than, I don't know, the prices they will need to give to the discharging process. You can give some financial donations to the NGOs, but you can also provide something else: legitimation, visibility, connections, but also motivation, for example, offering them to contribute to a bigger cause, therefore supporting them to accrue that benefits, for example, of motivation and attraction of great talents that I mentioned at the beginning. So is it possible actually to be sustainable despite it? There are so many challenges to be achieved. Is it possible to be sustainable and actually be able to be also economically viable? Well, I hope I share with you some useful resources about how to think, not if, but how to do that. And some hints about how to transform your great entrepreneurial idea into an effective driver for change through your organization, because you have been organizing yourself as an organization that is able to not only deliver a great new product or service in the market, but also to care about its broader impacts and take responsibility for its own and its value chain activities impact on the environment. And with this, I just want to thank you for your attention, hoping that my words will spark new insights and new ideas and new energy in you in order to transform your own entrepreneurial and new venture energies into creating values and good, not only for your organization, but also for the environment and the society.